my good friend Lobsang Sangye, the Speaker of the Tibetan Parliament, Mr. Pema Junge, Mr. Creamy, who's the national convener of this initiative, Professor Ashim Ghosh, Mr. Handa, Sri Grewal, and Sri Shankar Sanyal. You know, I would have also have liked to have first referred to the Honorable Governor, but I think I'll refer to him in absentia. It's a role which he's getting increasingly accustomed to being described as. The second issue is, I just don't like the idea of referring to Mr. Sangye constantly as the Prime Minister in exile. I look forward to the day when I can drop the word in exile and refer to him in this way. I might point out that I had a small and modest role in ensuring that during the swearing in of Narendra Bhai Modi in 2014, I ensured that he was put in the diplomatic section of the invited people. It did raise a little bit of furor, predictably. But I think it was important to show, at least as far as we were concerned, a symbolic commitment to the cause which he represents and which His Holiness the Dalai Lama represents. It's been 60 years since the time Loknayak Jayaprakash Narayan initiated the process of building a solidarity with the Tibetan people. Since then, as we've heard from speakers earlier, various people, whether it's Acharya Kripalani, whether it's Ram Manohar Lohia, whether it's Deen Dayalji, or most important, George Fernandes, who played a seminal role. In particular, I want to single out George Fernandes. If anyone in the recent past has played a seminal role in highlighting the cause of Tibet within India and sometimes even overseas, it was George. And therefore, to pay homage to George Saab is very important in acknowledging the importance of Tibet. I think it was a very brave act for the governor to come here amidst his tight schedule and address this. In the past, we've often seen that people who accept invitations to come to Tibet suddenly and quite inexplicably become indisposed. It is a tough call. In 1959, when Jayaprakash Narayan held this thing, it was a different call. Today, in 2019, and we are nearing 2020, the issue of China is very different from what it was in 1959. In 1959, China was still a little impenetrable society. Not much of it was known. Today, China has an awesome economic clout in the world. It can actually dictate terms, as we have seen in many of our neighboring states, and dictate terms and dictate the political course through its economic muscle. In this context, it becomes that much more harder to highlight the cause of the Tibetan people. So it's very easy and very convenient and sometimes very lucrative to say, yes, Tibet, it's a small problem, but it'll get solved. It's not really a problem. Or some people would like to echo and talk about the so-called splittist Dalai clique. I often refer to my friend Sangye as the chief representative of the splittist clique. So there is that awesome pressure which is constantly put in. And this pressure even works within India. Let me tell you, quite unfortunately. It works within India in the sense that there are a lot of people who say, well, the point is that we must mend all fences. We must constantly have a deepening engagement with China. And a precursor to that deepening engagement with China is forget Tibet. So there is an easy way out in this. And a lot of people, and I regret to say a lot of our Indian diplomats in particular, have succumbed to this. This is a trend which must be resisted for different reasons. The most important is that we have an emotional bonding with Tibet. And let us never forget it, that our entry into the Himalayan region was via Tibet. India's relationship with China was almost non-existent traditionally, except a few travelers. But the real relationship was with Tibet. That's the first point. Second point is that Tibet is not, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama, is not merely something confined to what is called the autonomous region of Tibet. It has an influence which spreads far and wide. I was in Mongolia earlier this year, and I noticed that there too, just as if there was in Tibet, for about 60 years, all monasteries, all traces of Buddhism were sought to be wiped out. It did not succeed. It did not succeed, just as it will never succeed in Tibet also. Because something which is so emotional and deeply ingrained in a people's psyche cannot be uprooted by a political ideology. It just cannot. But there too, the influence of His Holiness Dalai Lama is profound. It extends to Ladakh. It extends to parts of Arunachal. So the spiritual impact of Tibet, what might be called Tibet's soft power, is today something which we must recognize. It is a power which equals and sometimes exceeds the Han power of the Chinese. So that's a point we must recognize, that it is this civilizational connect which must bind India to Tibet. That is very, very important. The third point which we have to see is look at it in realpolitik terms. And Mr. Sangye, being very tactful, only referred to it in passing. There are various traditions in China. One of them is this great centralizing tradition. The Middle Kingdom, which spans everything, with the Confucian order sometimes. The overlayer of Confucianism. But then there is the tradition, the parallel tradition of Buddhism. And in that parallel tradition, there is an alternative China. Just like some people talk about an idea of India, I think there are various ideas of China. some of which come to the surface now, some of which which are hidden from surface. And in that, the role of Buddhism, and in particular, the role of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, is very important. We can see it occasionally manifest itself in Taiwan, occasionally in Hong Kong, occasionally in some other places. But that is a moral force which I think we in India are obliged to support. That is something we must always never forget. So how the larger issue of China, our building our relationship with China, and I think we must have a relationship with China, of course. We have to have a relationship with China. How that can be built is something which will take some time, which is an evolving situation. We are uncertain, they are uncertain. We go a step forward, they go a step backward. We sometimes go 3 steps backward. It's an evolving situation, and I don't claim to have all the answers to that. But sometimes, some easy answers, some lollipops are often thrown up. Now, maybe I'll be a little contentious and be more contemporary. My friend Sange was born in Darjeeling, very close to a village called Lopchu, and you must be familiar with its tea. So he's a native, in some sense we can say he's a native of West Bengal. Now, during the course of this debate on citizenship, I was often asked, why haven't you given the Tibetans citizenship? I think, of course, we can give Tibetans citizenship. But that's precisely what Beijing wants. Get rid of that 80,000 problem. Once and for all. Banish them, put them into permanent exile. Keep them away. When you link the question of people who were refugees to a question of nationality, you are taking them away from Tibet and putting them into India. We have no problem. We've always been host to these 80,000 people who came. But I always point out that the emotional connect of the Tibetan peoples who are in India is with His Holiness the Dalai Lama and with the Tibetan government in exile. And one day, they want to go back to Tibet, reclaim their motherland, and reclaim that civilization which was torn out. And that is what makes that difference in there. That the Tibetan people are with us. They will be with us as long as they want. But we must always be with them in their quest to reclaim their heritage. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Swapan Das Gupta ji sir, for your nice speech to enlighten us about Tibetan struggle and Tibet.